I am Priya, a 28-year-old woman born and raised in the vibrant chaos of Brooklyn, New York, a place that teaches you to be tough, but also to see the stories hidden in every brick and every shadow. I always considered myself a realist, a pragmatic artist who painted the gritty beauty of the city. The fire escapes the crowded streets, the endless movement of life. I wasn't one for ghost stories or old wives' tales, not even the chilling local legends that some of the older residents of our neighborhood would whisper about. My world, however, was not without its shadows, the deepest of which was cast by the disappearance of Samir, my childhood best friend, my first real love, my soulmate, who vanished without a trace when we were just 18. The official story was a tragic boating accident on the old East River waterfront near the abandoned industrial docks, a place we used to explore as kids, a place Samir loved. But I always felt there was something more, a cold knot of dread in my stomach that told me it wasn't just an accident. Samir had a twin brother, Rohan, who was always a striking contrast to Samir's open heart and infectious laugh. Rohan was calculating, ambitious, always slightly aloof even then. And after Samir's disappearance, Rohan seemed to flourish, taking over their family's small but growing real estate ventures with a ruthless efficiency that always made me uneasy. It felt like he was building an empire on Samir's grave. Now, 10 years later, Rohan had returned to our old Brooklyn neighborhood like a conqueror, buying up properties, tearing down old buildings, erasing the history that Samir and I cherished. He was planning a massive redevelopment project, a luxury apartment complex with a public park called Samir's Haven, which felt like a cruel mockery to me. As Rohan's bulldozers started tearing into the earth, whispers began to resurface about the twin brother ghost. A chilling tale from our childhood about a vengeful spirit haunting the docks where Samir disappeared, a ghost said to appear when the balance of nature or justice was disturbed. At first, I dismissed it as old superstitions stirred up by the changes in the neighborhood. But then strange things started happening, objects moving on their own, whispers in the empty lots where Samir and I used to play, a cold dread that followed me on my late-night walks near the construction site. It wasn't just the stories anymore, it was a feeling, an undeniable presence, telling me that Samir's memory was not at peace, and that Rohan's expansion was not just disturbing the land, but disturbing the truth. My problem became clear, and urgent. Rohan had gotten away with something terrible all those years ago, and now he was not only erasing Samir's memory, but literally building over the very ground where the truth might be buried. I knew then I couldn't stand by any longer. I had to find out what really happened to Samir and expose Rohan for the monster I suspected he was. I started my own quiet investigation, fueled by a burning need for justice and a growing sense that Samir's spirit was indeed reaching out to me. I revisited old hangouts, searching for clues in places only Samir and I knew. I scoured old newspaper archives, looking for overlooked details about the accident, and found some inconsistencies in Rohan's initial statements about the day Samir disappeared. I talked to anyone who would listen, old neighbors who remembered the twins and local fishermen who used the docks. Many of them were reluctant to speak, fearful of Rohan's growing power in the community or simply dismissive of my ghost stories. One old man, a retired dock worker named Leo, who had known the twins since they were toddlers, finally spoke to me in hushed tones, telling me that Samir had been afraid of Rohan in the weeks before he vanished, saying Rohan was acting strangely possessive about a family secret. He mentioned something about a small notebook. Samir always carried one that was never found after his disappearance. This detail gnawed at me, a tangible lead in a sea of shadows. Rohan quickly became aware of my inquiries, his charming facade cracking whenever my name came up. He started sending veiled threats through intermediaries, polite warnings to let the past rest, then more direct messages implying that my obsession was unhealthy and that I was disturbing the peace. He even tried to sabotage my art career by subtly discrediting my upcoming gallery show, suggesting I was unstable and my work was becoming too morbid, causing me to lose a major commission I desperately needed. My family and friends, wanting me to move on with my life, pleaded with me to stop, saying I was chasing a ghost and risking everything. They thought I was losing my grip on reality. I felt isolated and desperate, as if the entire world was conspiring to keep Samir's truth buried. My efforts to expose Rohan seemed to backfire at every turn. Witnesses would suddenly recant their stories or disappear for a few days. The police, whom I tried to re-engage, saw my leads as circumstantial and my reliance on old tales as delusional. Rohan's lawyers threatened me with defamation, lawsuits making it nearly impossible to publish any of my findings. I felt like I was running into a brick wall every time. Rohan's public image remained spotless, his Samir's Haven project lauded as a brilliant revitalization effort. I found myself at my lowest point when a crucial piece of evidence, an old photograph I found showing Rohan on the docks at an unusual time on the day Samir disappeared, vanished from my apartment. It felt like a deliberate act of intimidation, a message that Rohan was always one step ahead. The grand, groundbreaking ceremony for Rohan's new development was fast approaching, an event meant to cement his legacy and forever overshadow Samir's memory. I felt utterly defeated, helpless, and alone, thinking that Samir would never get justice, and his memory would be buried not just by concrete, but by lies and silence. The whispers of the twin brother ghost faded into the background, replaced by the roar of Rohan's machinery and the cold grip of my own despair. I sat in my studio, surrounded by my half-finished paintings of a city that suddenly felt devoid of hope. The weight of Samir's unsolved disappearance and Rohan's unchecked power pressed down on me, crushing my spirit. I was close to giving up, to letting go and accepting that Rohan had won. But then, as I stared at an old photograph of Samir and me as children, laughing by the waterfront, I noticed something in the background, a small, oddly shaped carving on an old, decaying wooden pillar near where the accident was said to have occurred. It was a symbol Samir had created, our secret mark, when he always made on things he considered precious or hidden. A sudden surge of determination reignited within me. I remembered Leo's words about Samir's notebook and the fear he had of Rohan, and a desperate plan began to form in my mind, a final, last-ditch effort. I knew the groundbreaking ceremony for Rohan's project was my only chance to confront him publicly and expose the truth. Rohan had arranged for a large public unveiling of the model for Samir's Haven at a gala event on the very site of the new park, a location not far from the old docks. During the ceremony, Rohan planned to give a speech honoring Samir, a speech I knew would be filled with more lies. I couldn't let him get away with it. I borrowed an old rowboat, a rusty thing I found hidden away near the less developed parts of the waterfront, and under the cover of darkness, the night before the ceremony, I rowed out to the decaying wooden pillar I'd seen in the old photo. The tide was low, revealing more of the ancient timber. My heart pounded as I searched for Samir's symbol, running my fingers along the rough, salt-worn wood. Finally, I found it, a small, distinct indentation. Behind it, barely visible, was a small, crudely carved cavity. Inside, wrapped in waterproof canvas, was Samir's missing notebook. Back in my studio, my hands trembling, I opened the soaked but preserved pages. It was a diary, but also a ledger of sorts. Samir had meticulously documented Rohan's increasingly erratic behavior, his manipulative schemes to take over their family's assets, and his growing resentment of Samir's gentle nature and his relationship with me. The last entry was chilling. Samir had discovered Rohan was systematically defrauding their family business and planned to confront him on the docks. He wrote about a hidden recording device he had with him that day to capture Rohan's confession if needed. Rohan's grand plan was to stage an elaborate accident for Samir to make it look like he fell from the dock during a struggle over the recording. Samir had suspected Rohan would try something and had hidden the notebook in his secret spot as a backup. The recording device itself was not in the notebook, but a small note directed me to a nearby, deeper crevice if the notebook was found. I had to go back to the docks again. The next morning, as Rohan stood on a brightly lit stage delivering his eulogy of lies about his beloved brother, I made my move. I had meticulously prepared a series of large, striking art canvases disguised as abstract pieces for a pop-up exhibition I de-arranged near the event entrance. These weren't abstract at all. They were topographical maps of the docks, highlighting key points, and on one, drawn in luminous paint that glowed under special lights, was Samir's symbol and a timeline of the events I'd pieced together. As Rohan was mid-sentence, I activated the display. Lights dimmed, and my canvases came alive, projecting images and text that directly contradicted his speech. My voice, amplified by a small microphone, cut through the stunned silence. "Rohan, you didn't just lose your brother, you murdered him." I held up the now digitized images of Samir's notebook entries, projecting them onto a large screen behind me. The crowd gasped. Rohan's face, which had been smiling confidently moments before, turned ashen. He tried to interrupt, to dismiss me as a crazy, grief-stricken artist, but the evidence was undeniable. The final, damning piece came from the hidden crevice I had found at the docks during my second desperate trip that morning. Using a special tool, I had retrieved the small, waterproof digital recorder that Samir described. I pressed play, and Samir's voice, clear as day, filled the air. "Rohan, you have to stop this. You're going to destroy everything." Then Rohan's voice, cold and furious. "You think you can expose me? You'll be just another tragic accident, Samir." The sound of a struggle, a splash, then Rohan's heavy breathing and a chilling line. "No one will ever find you, Samir. This waterfront will be mine." The recording ended with Rohan throwing something into the water, presumably the device itself. The crowd erupted into chaos. Police, who had been alerted by an anonymous tip I sent with a copy of Samir's journal, moved in and arrested Rohan on the spot. His face was a mask of pure hatred directed at me, but it was also etched with fear. His empire crumbled overnight. Samir's haven became Samir's truth. In the aftermath, justice slowly took its course. Rohan was convicted based on the overwhelming evidence from Samir's journal and the audio recording. His grand development project was halted, and the land was eventually rezoned to become a genuine memorial and nature preserve, a place of peace dedicated to Samir, just as he would have wanted. I returned to my art, but my paintings were different now. They still captured the city's essence, but with a new depth, a sense of underlying truth and resilience. The pragmatic artist in me had found a profound connection to the unseen, to the echoes of the past that demand to be heard. I no longer feared the whispers of the twin brother ghost. Instead, I found comfort in them. Sometimes, when the sun set over the renovated docks, casting long shadows across the water, I would feel a subtle chill, a gentle breeze, and I'd know Samir was there, finally at peace. The twist in all of this, the part that still sends shivers down my spine, is what Rohan mumbled during his sentencing. He said, "He always knew, didn't he? Samir was always a step ahead, even in death. He truly became the ghost." And as he said it, I saw a flicker in his eyes, not just of defeat, but of something else, something that looked like genuine fear of his brother, still haunting him from beyond the grave. It wasn't just my efforts that brought Rohan down, it was Samir's own foresight, his courage, and his undying spirit that ultimately exposed the truth. The twin brother ghost wasn't just a story after all. It was Samir, still fighting for justice.